This is a real event. For 4.5 millennia, it has stood in the desert. A man-made mountain of such impossible scale and precision that it defies easy explanation. The Great Pyramid of Giza, the last surviving wonder of the ancient world, is not merely a structure, it is an accusation. It accuses our understanding of the past of being incomplete, perhaps fundamentally wrong. It is the oldest and most profound cold case in human history. The central question has always been deceptively simple: how? How did a civilization, supposedly armed with little more than copper chisels, stone hammers, and human muscle, quarry, transport, and perfectly placed 2.3 million blocks of stone, some weighing up to 80 tons, to create a monumental line to true north with an accuracy modern engineers would envy? For centuries, the answer has been a mix of academic theory, imaginative speculation, and frustrated silence. We have been staring at the solution, locked away in the heart of the Giza Plateau, but we have lacked the key, until now. What began as a routine geological survey using next-generation technology has uncovered something that does not just challenge the accepted narrative, it shatters it. This is the story of the evidence that ends the mystery, only to begin a far more terrifying one. The Giza Plateau is a testament to an ambition that borders on the divine. The Great Pyramid, the tomb of the pharaoh Khufu, originally soared to a height of 481 feet. Its sides perfectly angled at 51.8 degrees. Its footprint covers 13 acres, and its construction required a feat of logistics that would strain even modern nations. For generations, the accepted wisdom, taught in schools and presented in museums, has revolved around the theory of brute force. Egyptologists, piecing together fragments of evidence, proposed a scenario of immense human labor. Tens of thousands of skilled workers, not slaves as Herodotus once claimed, toiled for decades. They quarried limestone from nearby Tura and Aswan, hundreds of miles to the south, and somehow transported these colossal blocks to the construction site. The prevailing theory suggested they used vast ramps, either straight or spiraling around the pyramid, to haul the stones into place. They used copper tools, which are demonstrably softer than the granite they were supposedly cutting. They used wooden sledges, wetting the sand before them to reduce friction. This narrative, while representing the best efforts of conventional archaeology, has always been plagued by inconsistencies. No archaeological evidence of these massive ramps has ever been found. The sheer logistics of building, raising, and then dismantling such a structure would be a project almost as large as the pyramid itself. The precision of the stonework is another confounding factor. The casing stones, most of which were stripped away centuries ago to build Cairo, were fitted so perfectly that a razor blade cannot be inserted between them. The east sides of the pyramid, a subtle concavity invisible from the ground, demonstrate a mastery of geometry and surveying that seems utterly anachronistic. And then there is the problem of the king's chamber, built from massive granite beams weighing as much as a modern locomotive, lifted over 200 feet into the air. The brute force model begins to fray under the weight of these questions. It explains that it was done, but it struggles to convincingly explain how. A pivotal breakthrough came in 2013, not at Giza, but at a desolate spot on the Red Sea coast called Wadi al-Jarf. A French-Egyptian archaeological team unearthed the oldest papyri ever found in Egypt. These documents, dating back to the 27th year of Khufu's reign, turned out to be the logbook of an official named Mir. Mir was a middle manager, an inspector in charge of a team of 40 elite sailors. His diary, the Diary of Mir, provided an electrifying, first-hand account of the pyramid's construction. He detailed his crew's work, making repeated trips from the limestone quarries at Tura, across the Nile, into the Giza Plateau via a system of man-made canals. They would load the blocks onto wooden boats and deliver them to a port that lay at the very foot of the pyramid. The papyrus confirmed the timeline, the source of the materials, and the highly organized, state-level effort involved. It was a landmark discovery, grounding the monumental project in the tangible reality of daily life. It proved the Egyptians were master mariners and engineers, capable of transforming the landscape to serve their needs. Yet, Mir's diary solved one problem while leaving the greater one untouched. It explained how the limestone blocks arrived at the construction site. It did not explain how an 80-ton granite block from Aswan was lifted into the sky, nor how it was cut with such baffling precision. The internal chambers, particularly the Grand Gallery and the King's Chamber, are made of this hard, red granite. Archaeologists have found evidence of quarry marks suggesting the use of pounders and dolerite balls. But the perfectly flat surfaces and the mysterious drill holes found in some granite artifacts tell a different story. These holes, some discovered over a century ago by Sir Flinders Petrie, show evidence of helical grooves, suggesting a drill bit that advanced through the granite far faster than could be achieved with simple hand-cranked copper tools and sand abrasive. The force required to cut granite in such a way is immense. The technology appears to be missing. This is where our story takes its turn, moving from the dusty annals of archaeology into the sterile, humming environment of a deep earth imaging laboratory. In late 2023, a consortium of geophysicists and engineers from institutions in Cairo, Munich, and Tokyo received permission to conduct a new survey of the Great Pyramid. Their project, codenamed the Osiris Echo, was intended to build upon the work of the Scan Pyramids project, which had used muon tomography to detect a large, previously unknown void above the Grand Gallery. The Osiris Echo team, however, was deploying a new, experimental technology, subatomic resonance tomography, or SRT. Unlike muon scanning, which detects density variations, SRT bombards the target with a stream of specific quantum particles and measures their resonant feedback. In theory, it can map not just the structure of an object, but the very molecular and crystalline composition of the material itself, creating a 3D model of unprecedented detail. The initial scans confirmed everything that was already known: the King's and Queen's chambers, the subterranean chamber, the Grand Gallery, and the recently discovered void. 4 weeks, the data streams painted a familiar, if extraordinarily detailed, picture of the pyramid's interior. The team leader, Dr. Kenji Tanaka, was about to file a preliminary report confirming existing layouts, when a junior analyst named Ilara Hassan noticed an anomaly. She was running a diagnostic on the raw feedback from the granite blocks that formed the King's Chamber. The SRT software was flagging a consistent, low-level error in the data. It appeared as a faint, almost imperceptible ghost signal, a harmonic resonance that shouldn't have been there. The granite's crystalline structure was supposed to be random, a product of cooling magma. Yet, the feedback showed a pattern. Dismissed at first as a calibration error or software bug, Hassan persisted. She isolated the signal and ran it through a pattern recognition algorithm. The result was impossible. Within the granite blocks, woven into the very fabric of the quartz and feldspar crystals, was a microscopic, non-random geometric lattice. It was not a natural formation. The patterns were breathtakingly complex, repeating with mathematical regularity. They resembled something between a fractal and a microcircuit. It was as if every single one of the massive granite blocks in the pyramid's core was manufactured, not quarried. This single discovery was world-shattering. It immediately prompted a half-dozen radical theories, each attempting to explain the inexplicable. The first and most scientific hypothesis revisited the geopolymer theory, long advocated by a small but vocal minority of chemists. This theory posits that the Egyptians did not lift the massive stones but cast them in place. They would have crushed the source rock, mixed it with a binding agent like natron or lime, and poured the slurry into molds, much like modern concrete. This would explain the perfect fit between the blocks and the absence of tool marks on many surfaces. The internal lattice pattern, then, could be a byproduct of this chemical process, a sort of crystalline watermark left by the specific binding formula. This theory elegantly solved the transportation and lifting problem. But it was too simple. The patterns were too complex, too ordered. They did not look like a chemical residue, they looked designed. They looked like they held information. This led to a second, more unsettling line of speculation. Dr. Yaris Thorne, a British archaeoacoustician attached to the project, proposed a radical idea. Thorne had long studied the strange resonant properties of the pyramid's chambers. Visitors have often noted that humming at a specific frequency inside the king's chamber causes the entire room, and indeed one's own body, to vibrate powerfully. The granite coffer in the chamber resonates at a frequency of 110 to 120 Hz, aligning with the human brain's transition from beta to alpha waves. It has always been dismissed as a coincidence of construction. Thorne believed it was the central purpose. He argued that the Great Pyramid was never just a tomb, it was a machine. A massive, finely tuned resonant device. The internal lattice patterns discovered by the SRT scan, he proposed, were not for structural integrity or data storage in a digital sense. They were a physical medium for controlling and amplifying sonic vibrations. Each block was tuned to a specific frequency. The entire pyramid was a colossal, solid-state musical instrument designed to generate and focus an immense field of low-frequency sound. This theory, while sounding like science fiction, provided a stunningly elegant solution to the construction mystery. What if this sonic technology was not just the pyramid's purpose, but also the tool used to build it? The concept of acoustic levitation, using powerful sound waves to counteract gravity, has been explored in modern physics laboratories on a small scale. Could the ancient Egyptians have possessed a mastery of sound so advanced that they could render multi-ton blocks of granite weightless, guiding them into place with minimal physical effort? This would explain the lack of ramps, the speed of construction, and the otherwise impossible feat of lifting the granite beams of the king's chamber. The mysterious drill holes were not made by a physical drill bit, but by a focused, high-frequency sonic drill that vibrated the stone apart at a molecular level. The so-called machines mentioned by Herodotus might not have been cranes and levers, but resonant amplifiers. Strange devices that emitted a powerful, directional hum. The builders, according to Thorne's hypothesis, were not just stonemasons. They were acoustic engineers of the highest order. They did not quarry the granite in the conventional sense. They would use a resonating device to find a seam in the bedrock, then broadcast a frequency that would sever it from the living rock with a clean, perfect break. They would then use another device to nullify its mass for transport. The technology was not lost. It was built into the very structure it created, a silent testament to its own power. The Osiris Echo team was now split into two camps. The geochemists, led by a stern German named Dr. Eva Rostova, clung to the geopolymer theory, preparing experiments to try and replicate the crystalline lattice in a laboratory setting. Dr. Thorne and his followers argued that such an approach was pointless. The only way to prove the resonance theory was to test it on the pyramid itself. They believed the lattice pattern was a key, a musical score waiting to be played. After weeks of heated debate in clandestine meetings with Egyptian antiquities officials, a highly controversial experiment was greenlit. It would be conducted under extreme secrecy. Thorne's team synthesized a complex audio waveform based on the geometric patterns pulled from the SRT data. It was not a simple tone, but a layered sequence of ultra-low and ultra-high frequencies, a cascade of harmonics that, on a computer screen, looked as intricate as a symphony. Their plan was to broadcast this signal at low power from a portable sonic emitter placed inside the king's chamber, pointed directly at the granite coffer. The SRT scanners would be running simultaneously, monitoring the entire structure for any change in its resonant feedback. The night of the experiment was unnaturally still. The Cairo glow was a faint smudge on the horizon, and the Giza plateau was deserted save for the security cordon and the small team of scientists huddled in their mobile command unit. Inside the king's chamber, a single technician placed the emitter, its polished metal surface a stark contrast to the ancient, weathered granite. He retreated, and the heavy stone plug that once sealed the chamber was rolled as close as possible. In the command unit, the air was thick with tension. Thorne stood before a bank of monitors displaying the pyramid's live SRT feedback. The image was stable, a silent, ghostly blue cross-section of the monument. "Begin the broadcast," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "Phase 1, 10% amplitude." The technician at the controls pressed a key. A low, almost subsonic hum filled the command unit. The vibration felt more in the bones than heard with the ears. On the screens, the blue image of the pyramid remained unchanged. For a full minute, nothing happened. The hum continued, a monotonous, deep thrum. A palpable sense of disappointment began to creep into the room. Rostova crossed her arms, a skeptical look on her face. "Increase to 25%, Thorne commanded, his eyes locked on the primary monitor. The hum deepened, and then it happened. A single pixel on the SRT display, deep within the granite block forming the western wall of the king's chamber, flickered from blue to a vibrant green, then another, and another. Within seconds, a chain reaction was spreading through the chamber's walls. The green light, indicating a sharp increase in resonant energy, traced the exact lattice patterns the scan had first uncovered. It was as if they were lighting up from within. The hum from the speakers was now joined by a new sound, a deeper, purer tone that seemed to emanate not from the equipment, but from the live audio feed coming from the chamber itself. The stones were singing. "What's the temperature inside?" Thorne snapped. "Dropping," an assistant replied, his voice trembling. 5 degrees Celsius in the last 90 seconds. "The electronics are failing," another shouted. The live video feed from the chamber flickered and died, replaced by static. But the SRT scan was still working. The green light was spreading, moving out from the king's chamber, flowing through the pyramid's core along invisible pathways. It was following the granite, connecting the king's chamber to the grand gallery, then plunging downwards towards the very foundations of the structure. The pyramid was waking up. Thorne felt a cold dread mixed with exhilarating triumph. The feedback loop is self-sustaining. He breathed, shut down the broadcast. The technician stabbed at his console. The hum from the speakers in the command unit ceased. But the sound from the pyramid did not. The deep, resonant tone continued, growing in volume and complexity. The stones were no longer just responding. They were generating the signal themselves. The team had not just played a song. They had turned the key in an ignition that had been cold for 4,500 years. On the main screen, the SRT data began to change. The green lattice patterns, which had been a perfect match for the broadcast signal, started to shift. New geometries were appearing, new pathways of energy were forming, self-organizing in real time. The pyramid was not just a resonant machine, it was a processor, it was thinking. Ilara Hassan, the analyst who had first found the anomaly, stared at her monitor, her face pale. She was running the new, incoming signal through the same pattern recognition software. "Dear Thorne," she said, her voice shaking so badly she could hardly speak. "The signal, it's not a resonance pattern anymore, it's a transmission. It's broadcasting something." All eyes turned to her screen. The complex geometries of the pyramid's resonance had resolved into a new, terrifyingly coherent image. It was not a message in hieroglyphs or a mathematical equation. It was a schematic, clear and unmistakable. It depicted a double helix, the building block of life. But it was not human. The structure was vastly more complex, showing a third and then a fourth strand weaving together in an impossible biological architecture. And beside it, slowly resolving into view as the pyramid's song reached its crescendo, was a star map, charting a course from a familiar spiral arm of the Milky Way towards a dark, unnamed space between galaxies. The evidence had finally ended the mystery of how the Great Pyramid was built. But it had just begun the mystery of who, or what, it was built to call home.